Hey everyone, and welcome to class. I'm so excited to have you here today for this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating part of the world, Southeast Asia. It's a gorgeous region, packed with amazing cultures, booming economies, and just incredible nature. But, like everywhere else in the world, it's not perfect. So, let's jump right in and explore some of the modern hurdles and challenges that Southeast Asia is facing today. Just imagine a massive, bustling city like Jakarta in Indonesia. You've got colorful roofs packed tightly together, huge skyscrapers towering in the background, and streets just completely buzzing with activity. It perfectly captures the incredible economic and cultural energy of the region. It's so full of life. But living in a fast-growing place like this, well, it definitely comes with some pretty big challenges. And today, we're going to figure out exactly what those challenges are.
So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start by looking at environmental challenges, then we'll talk about the Ring of Fire. After that, we'll cover cities and population growth, move on to trade and territory, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with a quick lesson summary.
All right, let's kick things off with our first big topic, environmental challenges, and specifically, our changing climate.
Throughout history, humans have definitely changed their environment. And right now, our global climate is changing. Because of this, sea levels threaten to rise all over the world. So why is this such a big deal for Southeast Asia? Well, a huge number of people there live on river deltas or flat coastal plains. That means their homes are literally just a few feet above the ocean. If the sea level rises, it could destroy valuable property and leave millions of people completely homeless. Just imagine the ocean creeping right up to your front door.
But rising water isn't the only issue here. Let's learn a really important vocabulary word, typhoon. A typhoon is a tropical cyclone. It's basically the exact same thing as a hurricane if you happen to live near the Atlantic Ocean. Now, scientists believe that climate change is actually making these intense storms even stronger and more destructive. And that means a lot more wind, a lot more rain, and much worse damage to towns and cities whenever a typhoon hits the coast.
Another huge challenge is the environment on land. Across the region, forests are quickly disappearing. People are cutting down trees way faster than they can ever grow back. And a major cause of this, humans are actually burning the forest to clear the land so they can use it for farming. This burning causes massive deforestation, and it also creates terrible air pollution. The wind picks up all this thick smoke and carries it for hundreds of miles, making it super hard for people far away to even breathe.
Moving right along, let's talk about something called the Ring of Fire and what it means to be living on the edge.
Our next environmental challenge isn't actually about the weather up in the sky. It's about the very ground beneath people's feet. You see, Southeast Asia sits directly on the boundaries between tectonic plates. These are massive pieces of the Earth's crust that are constantly moving and crashing into each other. Because of all this underground crashing, the region experiences some incredibly dangerous seismic disasters. We're talking about sudden earthquakes, giant ocean waves called tsunamis, and really explosive volcanic eruptions. Countries made up of many islands like Indonesia and the Philippines tend to get hit the hardest by these natural disasters, which sadly causes a lot of damage and loss of life.
Okay, I want you to pause for just a second and imagine something for me. What if your school suddenly got 5 times as many students tomorrow? It would be ridiculously crowded, right? Well, think about what happens when millions of people move to a single city all at the exact same time. What would happen to the roads, the houses, and the hospitals? Keep that idea in your head as we dive into our next topic. That brings us to our third topic, cities and population, specifically looking at rapid growth. We're shifting gears a bit from natural challenges to human-made ones. For a long time, Southeast Asia was mostly rural, meaning it was mostly farming areas. But today, millions of people are leaving the countryside and moving to urban areas or cities, hoping to find better jobs and a better life. Because of this, cities like Jakarta, Bangkok, Manila, and Ho Chi Minh City have become absolutely massive. And when millions of people show up so quickly, it puts a huge strain on a city's infrastructure. Infrastructure is just a fancy word for the basic public works a city needs to run properly. These cities struggle to build enough roads to stop endless traffic jams. They struggle to provide enough clean water, electricity, and garbage pickup for everyone. Even basic services like housing and hospitals fall short, simply because there isn't enough time or money to build them fast enough for all the new residents.
And that brings us right to our next important vocabulary word, contend. To contend means to struggle with something, almost like you're in a contest or a tough fight. Because the cities are growing so incredibly fast, the countries of Southeast Asia must strongly contend with all the challenges that come from these massive population changes. It really is a daily struggle just to keep these huge cities working smoothly.
It's interesting,
because population issues can cause social instability in a couple of different ways. We can actually compare two totally different situations here. On one hand, you have countries with very fast-growing populations. They have to contend with all the new demands for jobs, homes, and schools. But on the other hand, the exact opposite is also a problem. Countries with very low population growth have to worry about who is going to do all the jobs and take care of older people in the future. So both situations require some really careful planning.
Let's move on to our fourth topic, trade and territory, where we'll look at economics and politics.
Now we're going to focus on how these countries interact with each other when it comes to money, trade, and land. For a region that relies so heavily on buying and selling goods with the rest of the world, Southeast Asia actually has a surprisingly high number of trade barriers. Make sure you note this key phrase. A trade barrier is a law or a tax that makes it more difficult or a lot more expensive to import goods from another country. You can think of it kind of like an invisible cost wall. Now, a group called ASEAN was actually formed back in 1967 to try and boost trade and tear down these walls. But unfortunately, disagreements between the different countries have stopped them from reaching all of their goals.
Let's take a neutral look at a major territorial dispute happening right now involving artificial islands. These are actual islands built entirely by humans in the middle of the South China Sea. Many countries around the world rely on the South China Sea to move their goods on large cargo ships. But there's a lot of intense disagreement over who actually owns the small islands located in these waters.
Let's carefully report the facts of this dispute just as they're outlined in our reading. First, China claims ownership over a number of small islands in this sea. However, countries that are geographically much closer to those islands, like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia, also claim they own them. Back in 2016, an international court actually rejected China's claims. But China ignored that ruling and continued to assert ownership, even building military bases on some of those artificial islands. Because most of Southeast Asia depends on trade traveling through these exact waters, the United States has supported the Southeast Asian countries. The U.S. has called for freedom of navigation, which basically means ships should be able to pass safely and freely. This ongoing disagreement is a big deal, and it poses potential military and economic threats to the entire region.
All right, we've made it to our final section. Time for our lesson summary. Let's review what we've learned.
Wow, you all did a fantastic job focusing today. We covered a ton of ground, from the deep oceans all the way to super crowded cities. So here's a quick, clear checklist of our main points to remember. Number 1, we learned that climate change is causing rising sea levels and bringing more powerful storms called typhoons. 2, burning forests to clear land for farming is causing serious deforestation and terrible air pollution. 3, living on the Ring of Fire means these countries constantly deal with dangerous earthquakes and volcanoes. 4, millions of people moving into cities puts a huge strain on infrastructure like roads and water systems. And finally, trade barriers make doing business way more expensive, while territorial disputes in the South China Sea are creating a lot of political tension.
Before you head out today, I want to leave you with one final provocative question, straight from your reading to chew on. Based on the disputes and the complex trade we just talked about, how do you think huge countries like China and the United States continue to influence Southeast Asia today? Really think about that as you pack up your notes. Great job today, everyone, and keep asking those great questions.